In the late autumn of 1890, a young woman named Eleanor stood on a lonely train platform in rural Massachusetts, clutching a telegram that promised her a new beginning. But she didn't know that her journey to find peace would lead her to a nightmare she had already seen in her sleep. Eleanor was a widow, or so she thought. Her husband, Jonathan, had been lost at sea 2 years prior, leaving her in a world of gray silence. But as she stepped into the thick New England fog that evening, Eleanor felt a chilling sense of déjà vu. She was about to discover that some dreams aren't just tricks of the mind. They are maps, and if you follow them, they can lead you to things that were supposed to be dead and buried forever. If you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place. Every week, we dive deep into the raw, unfiltered human drama and the secrets people think they've buried forever. This is Stories We Never Told. Before we get into today's story, if you want to make sure you never miss a secret, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications. It helps us keep these stories alive. Eleanor's life in Boston had become a ghost story. Since the day the SS Atlantic disappeared off the coast during a massive hurricane, Eleanor had lived in a constant state of mourning. Jonathan was the love of her life, a brilliant architect with a laugh that could brighten the darkest room. When the official news came that no survivors were found, Eleanor's world collapsed. For 2 years, her family watched her wither away. She stopped visiting friends and spent her nights staring at Jonathan's empty drawing desk. Finally, her husband's aunt, Martha, sent a desperate invitation. "Come to the countryside, Eleanor. The air in Blackwood is fresh and the silence will heal you." Eleanor arrived at Blackwood's estate just as the sun was dipping below the horizon. The house was a massive Gothic structure made of dark wood and gray stone. Aunt Martha was frail, confined to her bed, but her eyes were full of pity when she saw Eleanor. "How are you truly doing, my dear?" Martha asked, her voice trembling. Eleanor felt the familiar knot in her throat. She hated that look, the expectation that she should just move on. She was only 26, but her heart felt a century old. "I'm just tired, Auntie," Eleanor lied. "The travel was long. I think I'll just head to bed." That night, the silence of the countryside was heavier than the noise of the city. Eleanor fell into a deep sleep, but what waited for her wasn't rest. In her dream, she was standing in a massive open field under a blood-red moon. In the center of the field sat a small, broken-down wooden shed. Despite a bone-chilling fear, Eleanor felt her feet moving toward it. As she got closer, a sound began to drift from the gaps in the wood. A low, rhythmic moaning. She reached the door. Her hand reached out and flung it open. In the corner sat a figure, an emaciated woman with matted hair. But when the woman looked up, her face had Jonathan's eyes, Jonathan's jawline. It was a monstrous fusion of a stranger and her dead husband. Eleanor bolted upright in bed, gasping for air. Her nightgown was soaked with sweat. She sat there for 20 minutes, her heart hammering. She knew she couldn't go back to sleep. She grabbed her wool cloak, a flask of brandy, and slipped out of the house, into the midnight fog, to clear her head. Eleanor began to walk, hoping the cold air would erase the image of that shed. She walked past the gardens and out onto a dirt path that led up a steep hill. As she reached the crest of the hill, the moon broke through the clouds. Eleanor stopped dead. There, in the center of a vast, empty field, was the shed. It wasn't a nightmare anymore. It was real. The same crooked roof, the same rotting planks. Her logic screamed at her to run, but her feet moved on autopilot. Step by step, she drew closer. And then she heard it, the moaning. Eleanor reached the door and threw it open. Inside, tucked into the corner, was a woman. She was pale, her skin clinging to her bones. She wasn't a monster. She was just a human being who was dying. Eleanor's fear was replaced by instinct. "It's okay," she whispered, kneeling in the dirt. "I'm here." The woman couldn't speak. Eleanor wrapped her cloak around the stranger and gave her small sips of brandy. All night, Eleanor sat in that rotting shed, holding the woman's hand. She talked to her, telling her stories about Jonathan, anything to keep the woman's spirit alive. At sunrise, a local farmer named Silas passed by in a wagon. Eleanor ran out, screaming. They lifted the woman into the wagon and drove back to Aunt Martha's estate. As the town doctor arrived, Eleanor felt a wave of exhaustion hit her. She went to her room, collapsed, and fell into a dark, feverish sleep. Eleanor didn't wake up for 3 weeks. She had contracted a severe fever. When she finally opened her eyes in mid-October, the golden autumn sun was streaming through the window. In the corner of the room sat a woman. She was healthy now, her hair neatly pinned back. It was the woman from the shed. Her name was Sarah. "You saved me," Sarah sobbed, "and you have no idea who you really saved." Sarah told Eleanor that 2 years ago, she was trapped on a burning ship. A stranger had broken down her door, carried her through the flames, and got her onto a lifeboat. They were stranded on an island off the coast of Maine for a year. That stranger kept her alive, hunting and building shelter. When they were rescued, the man's mind was broken. He couldn't remember his name. He was placed in a state asylum in Portland. Sarah had made it her mission to find his family, following the only word he whispered in his sleep, Blackwood. She had walked until she collapsed in that shed, certain she would die. Eleanor's heart was pounding. "The man, Sarah, what was his name?" The bedroom door creaked open. A man walked in. He was thinner, his hair flecked with gray. But Eleanor knew those eyes. It was Jonathan. He was alive. Behind every story we tell are real people. And today's story about Eleanor and Jonathan is a reminder that the world is far more mysterious than we like to admit. Sometimes there are threads connecting us that logic simply cannot explain. I'd love to know what you think. Was Eleanor's dream just a massive coincidence? Or was it something more? Something like fate stepping in? Let me know your theories in the comments below. If you enjoyed today's deep dive into the strange, dark, and mysterious, please hit that like button. It really helps us get these stories out to more people. And if you haven't yet, join our community by subscribing to Stories We Never Told. We upload a brand new long-form story every single week, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. If you or someone you know has lived through a true story that defies explanation, something strange, dark, or mysterious, we want to hear it. Send your stories to our email. Thank you for spending your time with me today. Until next story, take care.